Hey guys, it's Christine, also known as IvyWinter. Thank you for joining me for another Disney video. Today we are going to talk about the boarding group process for Rise of the Resistance. So I did get to ride Rise of the Resistance for opening weekend. I got on Friday, so it's the second day it was open. I will not spoil the ride. I will let you know right now there will be no spoilers about the ride at all. I don't want to ruin this for people. It is fantastic. Everyone should go in as fresh as possible. I know everyone wants to talk about it who's been on it, but hold a little bit, guys. Just give people a little bit more time. Give the West Coast some time to ride it when it opens. But what I do want to talk about is the process that they had for opening weekends, because there's been a lot of discussion about it. Currently, they are still doing this boarding group process, so people have questions about how it works. I don't know how long that is going to be running for. It could be a few weeks, it could be a couple of months. At any point in time, they could decide that they don't want to do it anymore and just turn to a typical queue and fast pass situation. So keep that in mind. I can't guarantee that it will or won't be happening when you go down, but if it is, if you're going in the next few days, they're still doing boarding groups. I just want to talk a little bit about how it works and why I actually really like it. So first, let's talk about the how. A boarding group lets you get in line for the ride, so to speak, without actually physically being in line. So what Disney is doing is you will arrive at Hollywood Studios, you will get through the gate, scan into the park, open up the My Disney Experience app, and you will be able to get a boarding group. There is like a little prompt call to action right when you open the app, because they know that a lot of people are coming for Rise. So it's like right in the main page of opening it that if you were in the park, you should be able to click through and give yourself a boarding group. So step one, have the app. I think a lot of people do, but some people don't really do their trips with the app. You're gonna have to for this experience if you want to ride it, at least as of right now. You do need to be physically in the park to be assigned a boarding group. Sure, I've heard things of people saying, well, I was on the Skyliner, I got it, and I was actually outside of the gate and I got it. And so there seems to be a bit of a confusion about if it's GPS based or actually tapping into the park. From what I understood, it was tapping into the park. If it is GPS based, I'd actually be surprised, because there'd be too many ways to circumvent that. So take everything you hear with a grain of salt. I can tell you that you will 100% be able to get a boarding group if you are in the park. I don't know about any ways around it. I'm not trying to give any ways around it. That is what I know. If you are going to be with other people, they also need to physically be present. You cannot go ahead and get a boarding group for you and 5 other people while they're asleep at home or in the hotel. They do have to be with you to get into the boarding group. You should be connected on My Disney Experience to get a boarding group together. So you could go into the park with a friend. Maybe you are not connected on the app and you each try to go for a boarding group. You'll both probably get a boarding group if you're there early enough. Let me preface with that, but it might not be the same one. So if you want to ride together, you need to make sure you're all linked on the app. But just make sure that everyone is connected to whoever is making the boarding group reservation. Does not mean that every single person has to be connected to each other. Just the person who is making the boarding group has to be connected to each other individual going on the ride. Now, how early do you need to get there to get a boarding group? Well, I can tell you from experience and what I've been seeing over the past few days is that the boarding groups are running out within 15 to 20 minutes of official park opening. I say it that way because Disney has been a little less than communicative on when they've been opening the parks. For example, when it actually opened the first day, they did not say they were going to extend hours, and yet they did end up, I believe, opening the park somewhere around like 5:30 or 6 in the morning. For the people who were waiting. There was no official announcement on this. They kind of just did it. They did something similar on Friday. We got there, I want to say 7:30, 7:45. The park was not supposed to open till 9 a.m. We were let into the park and were able to get a boarding group then. But they ended up running out just around or just after 9 o'clock. You do want to get there, I would say, at the bare minimum, 90 minutes before official opening. And if you can and want to get there earlier, by all means do it. The earlier you get there, the more you're almost guaranteed to get a group. But you cannot roll up at opening and expect to get one, because all madness will break out. You'll know if boarding groups are full because they put it on the app and they say that they're not giving out any more for the day. They also put up these like A-frame signs all around the park that will also say there are no more boarding groups. It's also posted on different like signage. You shouldn't not know if boarding groups are gone because they're very good about communicating that. You also have to remember that if you have a boarding group and it says this in the app, it is not a guarantee you will get on the ride. Why? This ride is complex. That's the most that I will say without spoiling anything, but it is complicated. There's a lot of pieces to it and a lot of effects and things that could go wrong. And so even on day one, it broke down. Day two, when we were going on, it also broke down a couple of times. And our return time was looking like it was going to be later and later. And we, at a moment there, thought we weren't going to get on because they're calling boarding groups in order and only if the ride is working. So there's no guarantee of what time you'll be on. You know, people have been asking, if I get boarding group 25, around what time will I be called? It can be different every day because it depends on how efficiently the ride is running, if there's any downtime, etc. So if you get a boarding group and they don't get to that boarding group by the end of the day, you're not going to be able to get on. Now, I know in the first couple of days, there were a lot of disappointed people and they were giving out people fast passes to return the next day. They were even giving out one-day park hopper tickets, I kid you not, for the people who couldn't get on. I don't know if that is still something that they are doing. And I don't believe that it is because they're trying to put that messaging that there's no guarantee. So you get the boarding group, and again, the earlier you get there, the earlier your boarding group, and the more likely you don't have to worry about any of this. So I still want to push that you should get there as early as possible. Now, with all of these rules and possibilities, you might say, Christine, but why do you like it? You know, you have to get there early. You have to all be together. You might not even ride. The reason why I like it is because it essentially lets you wait for your ride doing something else. The one thing I did not want to do with this opening was wait in line for 6, 7, 8, 9 hours. For me, that is not a fun time. Also for me, as somebody who has, gastro problems, this is something that I've been open about, that I have IBS, is not something that I could physically do. I cannot stand in a line for 6 or 7 hours and hope and pray that I'm gonna feel okay. There are people with disabilities, both visible and invisible, who would find that very trying. I'm not a fan of that whole kind of concept. This idea of being able to get this boarding pass and leave and do what you would like and come back when they're ready to call you is wonderful. When they do call you, you have a 2-hour window to return to the park. I did leave that out in the beginning, but 2 hours to get back to the park and ride the ride, which I think is fantastic. It is plenty of time that if you were all the way in Animal Kingdom, if you are literally on Big Thunder Mountain, if you are sitting in a restaurant eating a meal and your boarding pass group comes up, you're gonna have plenty of time to get there. 2 hours is a very big window of time. Now, some people might say, oh God, getting there early, that's not fair. You know, locals can get there super early. There's a lot of people riding it multiple days in a row. How is that fair? I mean, I think that argument's kind of silly. I mentioned this on the TTA podcast recently, but if I went on Soarin' every day for a week, nobody would chastise me for that or tell me it isn't fair. And the time that I show up to any ride is the time that I'm now in line and there's people behind me. And the boarding group is no different. If I'm showing up at 6 a.m. and someone else shows up at 7 a.m., it's fair that I am ahead of them in place, and vice versa. If somebody shows up at 5:30 and is able to get in and get a boarding pass, that's like if they open the gates then, they deserve that. They got up, they got there. So I think the argument of like, it is or it isn't fair for people to be able to have the opportunity to ride many times compared to other people, honestly, get there early. If it matters that much to you, get up and do it. yeah, locals get to ride the ride as much as they want. That's the same to be said about every other ride in every other park there. And you know what? I'm jealous. They're lucky, but I don't live there and I don't get that perk. So I think that should just be accepted. It kind of always has been, and I'm not really sure where the argument is coming for this ride, that all of a sudden the rules should change and we should be, I'm hearing crazy things like people, locals should be flagged and marked, once they ride it the first time, they can't ride it again for a month. Like, that's absurd. It really is. So I still think that this boarding group idea is fantastic. I am not an early riser at all by any means. I don't do this for any other ride. I've never really woken up early for any other ride. This was worth it. And I think them doing it in this way made it more worth it for me, because I can tell you right now that if it was 10-hour waits, I probably would have never gone out this weekend at all. So I think it's actually like giving more of an opportunity to people who can't necessarily do the long waits to actually get to ride. Anyway, that is how it works. Those are my thoughts. I almost kind of wish that boarding groups were used more often or more continuously. I feel like this is gonna end at some point, and at that point I'm a little fearful of what waits are gonna be like. But I wish that they implemented this for a lot of the big ticket rides. Like, I mean, Flight of Passage, that would be awesome if they implemented that and that was just how they did things going forward. I would be a fan, I'm not gonna lie. So, those are my thoughts. I know there's a lot of thoughts around this. I would love to know in the comments below if you experienced the boarding group sort of dichotomy. How did you feel about it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? If you are going soon and you have other questions that maybe I didn't answer, let me know in the comments below. I would love to help. Please do not spoil anything on the comments of this video. I will delete those comments. Like, if anyone mentions anything that I feel is spoiling the plot or what happens during the ride, I will delete those comments. I'm trying to be as best as I can be because I hate spoilers, so I don't want to be the one spoiling. It's too early. If you like this video, then like it. If you like me, you should subscribe. I'm making videos every single week. I really appreciate you tuning in. I hope that this helped, and hopefully I'm not putting out this video and then like tomorrow they just end boarding groups. It could happen, but hopefully it helps in the meantime. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great rest of the day. Bye.